In this video, I'm going to talk about the Project 4 in typography, the Fable or Tale book. So I have two examples open here. Some of the examples you have available to you are exported so that the facing pages stick together, whereas others aren't. So if you're looking at one and it looks like it's single pages, then you can change that. So in your PDF viewer somewhere, there should be an option, usually under a view menu. So in preview, a lot of them default to single page. So you'll just get single pages one after the other, even though you can kind of tell that some of them should be connected. So if you change that to 2 pages, it might say spreads, it might say facing pages, something like that. Then it will put them together because it knows it was exported from a facing pages document. So the first and last page should be on their own because those are the covers. This project, all the illustration was done in Illustrator, and the font is a great choice to complement the drawing. And that's because the drawing is of these sort of flat, organic shapes, very simple, and the font, which is Futura, is also very flat but geometric as opposed to very organic. There are a lot of very geometric shapes in here, but the textures come across as organic, so it sets up a very nice contrast. This example also has a lot of great type on a path, and it pulls out these phrases. For emphasis, there are different type sizes, but they aren't super close to one another, because that will just create confusion. And there's some effects here, like the type gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And moving on to these spreads, the type on a path is always sort of referencing those images and helping to express the meaning of the story. On this page, this is a great example of using your facing pages as a spread. So remember, this is 2 pages and there's a line somewhere in here. Basically disregard that line. Use one design surface. You won't be struggling to draw 2 scenes on one surface. You won't be trying to rearrange your characters and they show up twice and it looks like they're in the scene twice. Keep it simple. Keep your type working with the image. This is another great spread and another great example of type on a path. And if we go back up here to the first one, this is a really clever way to do type on a path without literally being on the main imagery. So these hands have a lot of texture. It would be really hard to read over them, and they're also beautiful drawings. So this student used this carefully drawn type on a path to have our type very much part of the imagery, but not directly on top of it. So I know I should start here and read this line, and then I've got this line that goes across here. So in this case, we did decide to leave a gap on the spread, but that's only because we were printing them. So it's not a great idea to do small type over a spread when you're going to print it, because the chances of it lining up perfectly and the bend of the page is not interfering are pretty small. So if you're just doing these electronically, you can go ahead and go right over that gap. This one sort of switches back and forth between having 2 pages and then having spreads. So it's kind of jarring when you go back and forth. And all the imagery was done in Photoshop with pixel-based images. There's some really cool layering here with both the text and another image. There are these bigger lines that we can read as opposed to the rest of the story that's used as sort of a background or more of an image element. And when we get here, there's sort of no chance of reading this stuff, but we've got our bigger text here. And you can see now we're back to 2 pages, very drastically different pages. There is, certainly a focal point on this text that we can read, and again, we have more background text. This one could be a little bit more passable because we could sort of see these as part of the same object, like this could be a door somewhere on this castle thing. This is some nice type on a path that sort of complements the curve here. We've got an extra curve leading us off the page. And now here we're back to a single spread. So these elements are nice, the extra text sort of becoming part of the trees, while having these very clear, large sections of type that are what we're supposed to read to be able to follow the story. And then we're back to these very different pages. This one has a good type treatment here. This font goes with the old style imagery very well. It's a very old-timey type of font. And it's doing sort of an overlay function as well as having large text that we can read easily. This page is maybe the biggest contrast between different pages, and it's very jarring, even though there's some interesting type on a path stuff happening. It's very difficult to sort of consider this with the rest of the book, especially because this image is so different. Going back up to the cover of this one, this font with its sort of little gaps in here and little decorative dots, this is a great font to go with pixel-based imagery. So because fonts are more like vector imagery, they can be a little bit easier to get an exact match. But this font sets up a nice feel along with the cover and these opacity elements. And we do see that font again on the second page. So those are just a few pointers to help you clarify and get started developing your Project 4. Remember, there are plenty of examples on the server. If there are any effects with the imagery or the type that you don't know how to do, just let me know and I will get back to you as soon as I can with demos and answers.